you know, I'm not naive enough to think that if we got a UN Parliamentary Assembly, everything would be sorted, but it would inject an element of democracy into the system. So if, let's say, a state like India, which I have some familiarity with its current system, if it's taken over by an autocratic dictator who is gaming the system for personal power and prestige and weaponizing and demonizing, say, Islam in order to stir up his Hindu base, totally against all morality and philosophical common sense. But if he's doing that, at the moment, members of the Indian Parliament have no recourse. What do? Well, there's this thing called the the World Parliamentary Association, which does have a bit of oversight over them. And we actually took a case to that body, who has the right to investigate on human rights grounds if parliamentarians are being persecuted in a given state, as many of them are. You know, parliamentarians, just because you're a member of parliament doesn't mean you can't be arrested at night and shot. You know, that still goes on tragically in many parts of the world. You see it in every newspaper. So if the UN Parliamentary Assembly came into being, I believe they could be ombudsmen for the rights of parliamentarians in general in every country in the world. That could be one of its many important functions. And they would be able to speak, as it were, against the government of the country they're representing under freedom of parliamentary debate rules. So if that particular president is known to be corrupt, he's known to have killed his sons, he's known to have amassed 10 million euros and hidden them in the Cayman Islands, if the parliamentarian from that country in the UN Assembly says all this, you know, it's protected underprivileged speech. And so it would open up a new avenue for truthful information, because the state that governs the national state would have no control over silencing these people. So I think that's why I'm supporting it, as a believer in democracy and freedom of speech and freedom of thought. So the UN Pact for the Future that was agreed at the Summit of the Future in September last year had a working group that was looking at all this, and I believe it will go in the right direction and lead to something. But it needs to, you know, get its skates on. What do we do about all the anti-United Nations hate speech that circulates on the internet these days? Well, it's coming from right-wing, fanatical, populist, racist sort of people that don't want democracy globally, that want wars, that want to demonize the other, that, for God's sake, want America and Canada to start fighting. I mean, yeah, that's what they want. These kind of crazy people who are so rich that they don't care. I mean, I think one thing we've got to do as a planet is start taxing the billionaires, because they're the guys behind this completely crazy, hyper-polarization of the world. They're the guys that own the internet and that have gamed the system, buying newspapers and so on to make everyone feel like they're in a war zone. A UN Parliament, which would be televised like the British Parliament is, would be a counter to all that nonsense. And quite what its constitutional powers would be vis-a-vis the Security Council and the General Assembly, you know, that remains to be worked out. There are people working on that at the moment. I've given some of the details of that. But I think it should actually, you know, in a global democracy, the World Parliament of the UN should have the sovereignty. So the Prime Minister of the planet would be the leader of the, you know, the party in the World Parliament that would command the majority of seats. Not at the moment we don't have such a thing. We don't have a planetary Prime Minister. We have special interest groups like the G7, the BRICS, NATO, you know, other alliances and blocs. What we need is someone that can speak for all humanity, truthfully, and clean up this chaos that is at the moment. So anyway, that's Project 31, which I think is jolly exciting. What do you think? Any comments on Swahili or the project?
No, that's...
Have you ever been to the Finnish Parliament building to listen to debates?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah. It's I used to attend meetings in the UK Parliament quite often, and I organised 30 meetings to discuss philosophy in Parliament, you know, ethics. Okay, we come to the end of our meeting. We've got one last little job, which is to see which gods we want to invoke from the tarot of the gods, who might come and assist this work. So, let me hold them out for you, and then you can do the same.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to offer me one? Ah. I'm going to go down here. Thank you. Right. So, okay, we have two very interesting deities here. We have the Page of Earth, Ea, which is an ancient Sumerian deity, so one of the earliest known to history. And the Earth suit is called Pentacles in the conventional card decks, but it's here the element of Earth. So the Page of Earth is the god of wisdom who was called the Lord of the Earth. Ea is the name given in Akkadian. He was called Enki in Sumerian. And it's interesting that some people say Ea, which could have been pronounced Yah, might have been one of the sources of the word Yahweh, the Hebrew god, because much that's in the Bible came from the ancient Sumerians and Mesopotamians. He was associated particularly with the god of the city of Eridu, and then his influence spread throughout Mesopotamia, including to the Canaanites, as well as far afield as the Hittites of what is now Turkey, and the Hurrians, and also the Hebrews. So Ea is an important god, the Page of the Earth. Now I think this deity is now working for, you know, the idea of a world parliament, an earth parliament, for a prime minister that could speak for all mankind. This is a very Ea kind of project. I think he's also trying to work for the amelioration of our screwing up the planet's ecosystem, because it's Ea who warns Utnapishtim to build a flood ark. When a flood is predicted, Ea warns the sage, who's a shaman, called Utnapishtim. He whispers through his reed hut and says, "You better build an ark. There's a ginormous flood coming." And what's interesting is that the background, which has been found on ancient texts, which is the origin of the Bible story, is that the other gods' council decided humanity was a dead loss and not worth anything, and therefore, was too wicked to survive. Nothing, start again. But Ea had faith in us and wanted to survive, some of us, and that's why he chose this shaman at Utnapishtim, who's like the Noah figure of Sumerian myth. And it's him that really we owe everything to, the fact that we're still here. So his story is not often told. What I'd love to do, if I have help and time and energy, is get a research project going to go into the pagan roots of the biblical text, particularly Genesis, but the others, and get parallel texts of the Ea myth in Akkadian and then along with the Hebrew, and actually do some detailed research on the origin of these myths, because I think the fact that they go back to predating the invention of the alphabet, we've got them in cuneiform, doesn't mean the Bible is any less valuable. It makes it more valuable because it's a you know, it comes from this great depth. So it's fascinating year's work, and you can see him here. He's having the ark is up there in the background. There were temples and shrines dedicated to him at Nippur, Gersu, Ur, Babylon, Sippar, and Nineveh. And he had his consort, Ninhursag, or Ki, or Uriash Damkina, and they have a great love story, which, you know, they work together. Yeah, I think Sumerian, Babylonian, Akkadian mythology is really rich. I also think that some of the Greek stories actually came from there. And we know that Pythagoras, for instance, spent time in Babylonia learning all this stuff. And he put it into his teachings of philosophy. Yes, so really we need, this card is asking us to commune with the earth and ask what we can do to help her. And know that we've got Ea's got our back, so to speak. And is again trying to help us not destroy ourselves with floods and fire and all the rest of it. Wisdom is the key here. He is the God of wisdom. Right, now, the next one, which, where did I put it? Is an air card, 2 of air, who is actually Uranus, who's the Lord of the Heavens, and was regarded as such in the Greek system of the gods. And he's the male equivalent to Urania, who was the female goddess of the heavens. It's interesting that Herodotus said that the Semites of Arabia worshipped Aphrodite Urania, the heavenly Aphrodite, heavenly love. He's the male equivalent. And I think when we are really deeply in trouble, I went to the church today here at Protect to just say a Sunday prayer, and there's images of the Virgin Mary always looking up in the sculptures. They're always looking up to the heavens. You often see paintings of Jesus, he's always looking up. I think this is a natural instinct. We look up because that's where the heavens are. In Mongolian tradition, Tengri is the lord of the sky. And in the shamanic Siberian traditions of Mongolian peoples, God is the sky. And so you look up because the sky is awesome and magnificent. And that's even before we realised how vast it is. Our ancestors had this innate knowledge that the sky is like a very powerful deity. And Uranus is the husband of Mother Earth, Gaia. So I love this, it's beautiful, because we need to celebrate the marriage of the sky and the earth. We humans are sort of supposed to be looking up and working with cosmic law from the celestial realms, but then manifesting it on the earthly realms. To me, one of the first things we have to do is stop the killings, fightings, war that are crippling the earth economy and pumping out all kinds of resource depletion, fossil fuel excesses, and so on. So making peace will require the earth and the sky to come back together again in harmony, I think, is what's being said here. And a lot of people talk about, aliens, UFOs, higher intelligences in pan-galactic wisdom. Yeah, let's bring it all on. That's what philosophy loves. We have to have these higher wisdoms come, but not in a way that frightens, terrorizes, and colonizes and destroys our achievements as humanity. I think the shamans of this planet now need to be in touch with these divine forces, as they always were in the time of Plato, and all the great sages of history have tuned into Uranus and Urania and downloaded information for the betterment of humanity. That is what philosophy is about, to me. So it's you know, it's a joint work, the earth and the sky working together for the salvation of this planet. What I don't agree with is you know, the idea that the earth is disposable, that somehow we can just use this up. No, it's our home for at least a few more 100 million years, and for my descendants and your descendants. And probably for us in future incarnational cycles. So let's leave it, you know, let's beautify it and celebrate all its diversity, all its ecosystems, all its complexities, and have a science that is life affirming. Christ, of course, always looking up, talked about the kingdom of heaven, and that is the basilion to uranon. He's talking about heaven, which is that super celestial realm that I'm talking about. But we have to ground that in this earth and make this a peace planet. So that to me is what these two cards have said. How would you agree, or do you think there's more can be said here? What's the Finnish word for heaven, heavens, the sky?
Taivas. Taivas.
Taivash.
Taivas.
Taivas.
Yeah, it's the same word for heaven and sky.
Okay.
Yeah, same in Finnish.
Yeah, that's what you have in French. You have ciel, it's sky, but it's also heaven. Whereas in English we have sky, and then we have another word, heaven. But you have Taivash, meaning both. So what's the word kingdom of heaven in the biblical tradition in Finland?
Taivaiden valtakunta.
It's from the same root.
Yeah, it's just taivas in that one is of the heavens, so that is Taivaiden.
Right.
Just always in a different form depending on the context. Valtakunta is a kingdom.
Right. Good. Well, that I think is where...
But I think the important one here also is the earth. Maa.
That's
Earth is maa.
Finnish. Is
Yes.
it? That's very interesting. Ah,
Maa.
is that two A's?
M-A-A.
Yeah, two A's.
Maa.
Ah,
I would say that's one of the most important Finnish words.
it's a strong word. It's related to the Egyptian word ma'at, possibly. Which
It's
has a T
also
on the end.
it's also a very pleasant one to chant.
Aha.
It's
You can use it
it's a
in
strong one.
poetic chanting. Yes. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for being here as a helper. We won't have you here at the next philosophy club, but you've left some good traces here, and hopefully you'll come back sometime later on, and we can pick up. But yes. Okay, I think I'll finish there. Thank you.